Good afternoon. I'm Tanya Bays, a mother of twins, a childcare provider, educator, and a childcare changemaker from Texas.
And hi, I'm Wendoli Marte. I'm an organizer in the Bronx, New York, and I am the Director of Economic Justice with Community Change Action. Britannia and I are hosts for this evening. We're very excited for the next 3 hours of conversation. This event is a collaboration between Community Change Action, our child care changemakers movement, and our local grassroots organizations, our partners on the ground. During tonight's live stream, we'll be making rounds across the country, talking to parents, providers, organizers who are demanding bold federal action from Congress to save the child care system and to invest in an equitable, universal system that works for all families.
For months now, we've experienced tremendous uncertainty, loss, and economic strain across our communities. So I'd like to start tonight with a collective deep breath and a moment of silence. Please join me. Thank you. As a childcare provider, I have felt firsthand the effects of Congress's failure to provide the relief for our families and childcare professionals need to survive this pandemic. We knew that the childcare system was underfunded, undervalued long before this pandemic, but it's only gotten worse. And this year, we've all experienced what parents and childcare providers have always done: how to be nimble, creative, and innovative ways to connect and hear our voices heard tonight. So tonight, we all came together to take action virtually.
Childcare, as we know, is an important racial and gender equity issue for all women and their families, which means all families. The childcare industry, and frankly, all levels of the caring economy, has been led by the labor and leadership of women of color. So today, you'll hear from moms who are striving to give their children and their families the best chance in life while making really hard choices every day. About their careers. We'll hear about childcare workers risking their lives with low wages and little protections to care for our babies. They are everyday superheroes, nothing short of that. So together, you'll hear from them about the work that they're doing and how that's manifesting into a new vision that values all families. This starts with Congress, of course, passing a just recovery package that includes real relief for all children and all families. And as a childcare movement, we're here because we're demanding that Congress delivers $100 billion to help our childcare industry survive. That's immediate relief. And then long term, we need an equitable childcare system that's grounded in racial and gender justice, that validates the importance of community-based childcare providers across all settings, that guarantees living wages and benefits for all childcare workers, and that makes childcare truly affordable, accessible, and culturally appropriate for all families.
You're right. And to do this, we need to amplify our voices and claim our seats at the table. Over the next few hours, we're going to hear about the amazing work individuals and grassroots organizations are doing to help add their voices to the childcare chorus. Our stories deserve to be heard, and our essential labor deserves to be seen. So on the screen, you will see a way for you to share this moment and amplify your voice to tell your childcare truth. We are calling on Congress directly to recognize the value of childcare and provide the federal funding and resources we need.
Yeah, that's right. So you're probably wondering, who are the organizations behind this event? Well, we'll tell you a little bit about them. Community Change Action is a national organization that works in partnership with grassroots communities and individuals to build power from the ground up. Together, we believe that an effective and enduring movement for childcare and early learning must be led by those most directly impacted, particularly the women of color that are leading the charge. So over the course of the last few years, our work with state and local grassroots partners has been at the front lines of building power and elevating the voices and experiences of moms, families, and childcare providers. we know that our work is important. And that's why we've been focused on really investing in childcare, demanding federal and state and local investments, building an equitable system that ensures access to high quality, culturally responsible childcare that's available to all families. And that means at the local, the state, and now, of course, the federal level.
Exactly. And I'm so grateful that Community Change Action created Childcare Changemakers. We're a national network that empowers connections between parents, providers of children, and grassroots childcare organizations to build power and fight for a just and equitable childcare system. This COVID-19 global pandemic has exacerbated the childcare crisis, and it is unconscionable, unnecessary, and undeniable levels for everybody. This is why Childcare Changemakers is so vital and we're growing so fast. So today, Congress and the world will witness the impact of the childcare crisis, see the amazing dedication, resilience, and commitment of the childcare community, and hear our clear demand to sit at the table where decisions are being made. No more business about us without us.
That's right. Can you tell us a little bit more, Britannia, about why you're a change maker? What does that mean? What brought you into this fight?
Absolutely. As a first time mother of twins, access to affordable childcare is so important to me. And when it wasn't available in my rural Texas community, I stepped up and I filled the need with my own childcare program called Our Loving Village because it takes a village to raise a child.
That's right. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your personal story. We're really proud of how vibrant Changemakers is, that it has created a space for awesome women like you to be able to engage in the fight. We're also very proud of the work that we do with some of our amazing state-based local organizations who fight at the state and local levels to uplift the needs of parents and providers in the current system. These amazing groups, many of whom you'll hear from tonight, include organizers in the Land of Enchantment in New Mexico, Parent Voices and Parent Voices Oakland in California, Mother in Justice in Michigan, the ECE on the Move in New York City, Isaiah in Minnesota, and many others. We're very proud of the amazing work that these organizations are doing to really organize directly impacted parents and providers to win improvements for their childcare systems in their states and at the national level. And this bold vision that you're going to keep hearing about tonight for early learning and childcare at the national level is really inspired by the local work that these organizations are doing and the dream that we have for a universal equitable system.
Exactly. And as this COVID-19 crisis has continued to surge across the country, our parents and childcare providers have gotten better and better at sending this clear message. Congress, you need to save childcare. We have made an art and designed holiday cards to send to our elected officials. We recorded countless videos sharing our childcare truth and asking for our seat at the table. And we want to uplift our voices in all ways that we can think of during this challenging time. Although we're not physically able to meet together, we are a creative movement and we want to save childcare and honor our virtual event with your voices. If you are a childcare provider, a parent of young children, or both, join us in this awesome movement and join Childcare Changemakers.
Yes, so tonight we have so much in store for you. We will dive deeper into our vision for a better, universal, equitable childcare system through some policy roundtable discussions, listening to really powerful stories of providers and parents. You're going to see some kids on the screen too. And we're going to be talking about some of the actions that folks are taking and that we think are needed in order to advance a really bold vision for childcare. So as we go through, please write your comments and your questions in the chat. We really, really want to hear from you. And we're going to get to them throughout the night. We'll be pulling from your questions and comments as we kick off the program. Back to you, Britannia.
Right. Throughout our broadcast, you will hear us call you to action. And we want to educate you about the state of childcare in America. But the best thing that you can do is to call Congress for childcare. Many families will not have a happy holiday without this childcare funding. And we need Congress to pass the childcare stimulus relief package now before they go on holiday break. So follow the link in the video on the screen to call your local legislators today.
Go to bit.ly/childcarevoices. On the left is a description of our campaign. On the right, you input your personal information. This connects you with the correct representatives. Make sure you put the phone number of the phone you will be using and be sure to turn off any silencers or blockers that will prevent the call from going through. When you're ready, click the big red button. Next, read the script and get your one line of why childcare is important to you. Then, click the next big red button. Our tool will now call you. Don't hang up. President-elect Biden might only have one rep, but you probably have three. The system will have you call each, and it will auto-dial as soon as you are done with one. When you are finished, give yourself a pat on the back for speaking truth to power and share with your friends. We made that easy too.
That was awesome. And I've tried this tool. It is so easy. Even President-elect Joe Biden can do it. Now you guys know how to take action. So please join us and call Congress for childcare.
Thank you. So now we're going to dig in. Next, we have an exciting panel about federal policy. Our goal for this conversation is to learn about the latest updates on Congress COVID relief negotiations, how it will impact childcare, how childcare is showing up, and discuss how our movement can leverage upcoming opportunities to really shape the fight for relief and making sure that childcare justice is really centered in that fight. So to kick us off, our awesome moderator, I want to introduce Michelle Lassie, a parent and a child care change maker from Portland, Oregon. She'll be moderating the discussion and want to make sure that as she's moderating the panel that you'll get to put your comments and questions because we will be referencing them throughout the conversation. Michelle, take it away.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm so excited to be here. I've been a change agent kind of out of the womb. And as Wendeley said, I'm a mother and a wife. So I'm excited to bring on several panelists today. First, we have Joanne Panyo, who is a federal policy advocate who has focused on economic justice issues ranging from workforce development, housing, and childcare through legislative and administrative advocacy. We also have Christy Flores, who worked in early childhood education for 20 years before she lost her job during the COVID pandemic. She remains passionately involved in childcare advocacy in part through Childcare Changemakers. And then we also have Noni Galloway, who is a parent leader for Parent Voices Oakland. She is a mother to a 4-year-old son who is her world and who has been a leader in California's early education movement to win more funding for an early education program. Welcome. I'm so glad you each are here. So right now, Congress has an opportunity to save childcare, but they are allowing partisan politics to get in the way of passing any real meaningful relief. We need at least $57 billion to save childcare from the effects of just COVID right now. $10 billion is not enough to meet the needs and demands that so many of our providers and families are facing. 2/3 of working women have already dropped out of the workforce. We will lose 4.5 million childcare slots forever if Congress fails to see the needs of the childcare sector. We need Congress to act. So, panelists, thank you so much for being here. What I would love to hear from you each is, how did you become a childcare champion? Why is passing this federal funding for childcare so important to you? If we could start with Joanne, I would be so grateful.
Hi, Michelle and everyone. It's so great to be here with you as part of such a crucial conversation on the fight for childcare. I became a childcare champion through my work as an advocate here in Washington, D.C., and my very own home state of California, working with families and communities struggling to make ends meet. I believe that passing federal funding for childcare is critical because our families, our providers, our educators, and our communities need to be seen, they need to be heard, and they need to be valued. The pandemic has taken its toll in so many ways, and families and providers shouldn't have to decide between paying for childcare, putting food on the table, or keeping the lights on.
Thank you. Noni, would you share?
Yes. First, I want to first say thank you for having me. I am here and proud to represent Oakland parents, the city of Oakland, and of course, the home of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. So I just wanted to say that I became a child care champion when I joined the fight with Parent Voices of Oakland to pass Measure C in Alameda County. Measure C is a half-cent sales tax that will go towards increasing child care access for families in Alameda County, improving child care worker wages, and supporting Children's Hospital in Oakland. In 2016, when my son was born, I was put on the child care subsidies list. My son turned 4 this year, and I'm still on this list. In March, when I lost my child care due to COVID, I was nervous and not really for sure what to do. So I went ahead and called my local referral agency to check my status. On my check my status on the wait list. I was told that there was no money and that when the funding does come available and when they do get to my name on the list, I would be contacted. I was blessed to make it work when I was put on the wait list 4 years ago. And I was also blessed to make it work when they told me there was no money for subsidies. But I know that there's so many people in my community that still are on the wait list and are told the same thing that I was told, but are struggling to make it work. And that's why passing federal funding for childcare is important to me.
Thank you. And Christy, would you please share why you're a champion? Hey, Christy, you are muted. So if you don't mind starting over, that's okay. So,
okay. All right. There you go. Sorry about that.
Thank you. No worries.
Well, I became a child care champion over 20 years ago. As I began working my way through college, I worked at a Montessori school. And I was blown away by the trust bestowed upon the children in the program where I was working. They were allowed to learn at their own pace and given a space that was loving and nurturing. And in that environment, these children rose to the expectation and more. I was hooked. I wanted to be a part of that. So throughout the years, I have worked in many wonderful facilities, and I have left childcare at times to pursue more profitable ventures, but early childhood continues to call to me. I believe in the work. I believe in early childhood education. I love the children, and I believe that we have a responsibility and an obligation to provide all children with the tools to achieve their fullest potential. This is why federal funding for child care providers is so important. Without the funding, providers like me will not be able to pursue their calling. Children and parents will not have access to quality child care, and our children will be the ones to suffer for it.
Thank you. I love all the heart in this room. So thank you all for being here. So we have been working for a little bit to get questions, and we have some questions from parents and providers across the country. So Joanne, Ross from Texas was curious how the most recent round of COVID stimulus money works. Like, where are we at? How much money is getting talked about and earmarked for childcare?
Thank you for that question. Congress has been on this contentious battle for a COVID relief package to address a long list of priorities that we all know are important to us, right? From childcare, unemployment insurance, food and nutrition, among others. The last COVID relief package was passed 9 months ago. And through the CARES Act, we saw $3.5 billion federal dollars included for childcare. Here we are 9 months later at the end of 2020, and Congress is still very much divided on what are some of those top priorities. Negotiations in Capitol Hill have been in the ballpark of about $908 billion for the next COVID relief package. And there are areas that seem to be holding things back and have prevented lawmakers from reaching an agreement. So that includes state and local fiscal aid, liability protections for businesses, and stimulus checks. On childcare itself, we know the following three things. One, that childcare is seen as an area of need and as a top priority. Two, this need has been a part of the negotiations conversations in the amount of $10 billion. And three, we know that this amount of $10 billion is nowhere near enough of what it'll take to keep the childcare sector up, running, and surviving both during this pandemic and beyond to endure the economic impact that the pandemic brought about with it.
Thank you. So that's the big federal bit, but we all live in local places. So Noni, I was wondering if you could answer the next part of Ross's question. So once we win federal funding, we also need to fight at the state level to ensure that the money gets distributed properly. So what are some of the things that Parent Voices has been doing in California with regards to ensuring that the money that gets set aside for childcare is distributed to the families who need it?
Well, thank you for that question. So for one, Parent Voices is a statewide organization. We have many chapters throughout California that is working very hard to make sure childcare is for all for the last 25 years. But what we've been doing directly is working with the governor, the legislator, and our lead agencies to address the COVID-19 relief through an equity lens. Our members sit on the Parent Subcommittee for the Early Childhood Policy Council, which will inform the COVID-19 relief and how funds should get distributed. We have built really strong relationships and turned them into child care champions. We work closely with the Legislative Women's Caucus, who are looking at COVID and the child care crisis as a gender and racial justice issue. We have a bill with the Assembly member who is looking to update our sliding scale fees because even before COVID-19, but especially now, families and child care providers can no longer subsidize these systems. And we are working with the union to make sure that they don't put the needs of parents and providers against each other.
That's so important. I love
Thank
that
you.
we have to link arms together because we're really all fighting for the same thing. Please,
Yes.
if you're live here, drop a comment in the chat if you're curious how your state works and how you can work better with your state. So I wanted to go back to you, Joanne. Giovanna from California was wondering, are people who are undocumented going to be eligible to receive childcare support?
Thanks for that question, Giovanna. So folks might know or can use a refresher in that the federal program that funds childcare is called the Childcare Development Block Grant, so CCDBG for short. This is the primary federal funding stream that trickles from the federal level down to the states. And by law, it restricts childcare assistance in most situations to individuals who are considered to be, quote, qualified immigrants. This means that in most cases, eligibility for receiving childcare is based on the citizenship or immigration status of the child and not that child's parent. I want to point out, administering agencies may not request any type of verification, identification of a parent's citizenship or immigration status, and they're prevented from considering the parent's citizenship or immigration status, even when determining a child's eligibility for childcare. So they can't ask for it, they can't question it at the state level, at the agency level.
Thank you for clarifying that. So I'd like to turn to you now, Christy. Virginia, a now grandparent in Michigan, she wants to know, how can parents and caregivers show up for providers? So as a parent and provider, you've experienced all the angles of childcare. What is it that parents don't understand about being a provider? And conversely, what do providers forget about being a parent?
Well, providers' voices have gone unheard for far too long. We need parents and caregivers to join our voices so that we can be heard loud and clear. We need them to voice our contributions, to speak of our sacrifices, and to help us get the compensation that we deserve. We need parents to be our voice. In regards to parents and what they may not understand about being a child care provider, they may not understand that child care is work from the heart. It is an answer to a calling, and it doesn't stop when providers clock out. There is so much time spent outside of child care business hours that are devoted to planning and prepping to create an environment that feels organic, inspires learning, and builds lasting connections. And to answer your question about what do providers often forget about parents, about being a parent, providers forget that being a parent is hard. It's full of doubt and agonizing choices that we make daily. So as providers, what we can do is love and celebrate their children and assure them that their child is progressing and support their need so that they can be present for their children.
Christina, thank you so much for sharing your heart. I am so grateful for you to be here. Noni, as a parent, what would you add to what Christy said?
Well, first, I want to say thank you, Christy, for your service and being there as a provider for our children. It really does mean the world to me in particular. But that's the reason why I'm here. That's the reason why I'm part of Parent Voices of Oakland, not only to fight for accessible and affordable childcare for all, but also to uplift and support the childcare providers like Christy, who are essential and important in our lives. We stand with our childcare providers. We want them to be paid a livable wage, supported as a small business, and want them to feel that they are appreciated and honored for the services they provide. I know personally how much I appreciated my childcare provider. She gave me the peace of mind to go to work knowing my baby would be safe. And I knew my son was safe every time I dropped him off to Miss Gloria's based on his smile and his relationship with his friends. So once again, I want to say thank you personally to all the childcare providers out there who have been there for us time and time again, especially during this COVID crisis. We do stand with you at Parent Voices.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to echo that peace of mind as a parent when you let your baby, your pride and joy go into these loving hands is so relieving when you can go off and do your work. So, Joanne, Ryan from Portland is curious that we know we have a fight ahead of us, even with the friendly Biden administration that has pledged to fund childcare at a higher level. Considering the dual challenges of childcare, costs are too high for families to afford, and, as we heard from Christy, staff makes too little to live. What steps can we take to make sure the Biden-Harris administration follows through on their childcare pledges?
Well, Ryan, you're absolutely right in that our collective push for childcare will be a continuous fight, not just right now in the present moment or even right after Inauguration Day, but we'll have to keep on pushing forward as we all fight for a more bold and visionary childcare system, the kind of system where our communities can really thrive and where our childcare workers are paid livable wages. You know, President-elect Biden has recognized the caregiving crisis that our country faces, and as part of his Build Back Better plan, childcare has been named as a top priority area. The steps that we can take as a community of advocates, as a childcare movement, starts with, I think, working together first and foremost to ensure that both the Biden-Harris administration and Congress are seeing and hearing the struggles, the challenges, and the barriers that so many of our communities across the country are facing. Why? Because first, the administration and Congress will be working together, not only to address the COVID crisis, but they'll also be working on a recovery process and period and what that might look like moving forward. Also because it can help shape meaningful policies that will make sense for our communities when we all work together. Let's not underestimate the value and power of story sharing as a way to inform and guide policymaking processes. You know, making sure that the incoming administration keeps to their promises, I think, also starts with connecting to folks locally in your community. And that's why Childcare Changemakers is such a great network of state-based organizations. We encourage folks, if you haven't already, to check out our Childcare Changemakers website, where you can find more information, tools, and resources to connect with others who are fighting the same fight for a more equitable childcare system and who can be there right alongside with you. I mentioned this push to both the incoming administration and Congress, and this means reaching out to your local elected officials through the Phone to Action tool that has been shared in the chat previously, and telling them why funding childcare matters and why we cannot afford to leave childcare out now.
That was terrific. Thank you so much, Joanne. So we only have a couple minutes left, so I wanted to hear from each of you. First, thank you again for being here and sharing part of your story so that we can all lift up childcare. But if you had one thing that you wanted our viewers to know, what would it be? And I was hoping we could start with Christy.
Well, if there was one thing I would want you to know and to remember is that childcare providers have done for others what we need done for us now. We need support. We need advocates. We need help to do the vital work raising the next generation of children. That means we need to be able to do our work without concern for our own financial security. We need to earn a living wage, and we need funding to reopen or sustain the current businesses, childcare businesses that are that still exist. And we need Congress to act now.
Yes, we do. Noni, what would you say?
Yes, well, what I would say is, for one, we need childcare champions on all aspects of the government. So we can truly make some serious changes in this next administration. And I definitely feel that we need to apologize to our children for our COVID response by doing better when it comes to their future. So I just want to reach out to all the people who are watching. If you are a parent or work in education and live in California, Parent Voices family would love to connect with you. So please reach out by going to www.parentvoices.org. And if you're directly in Oakland like me, you can reach out at pvooakland.org. Once again, thank you so much for having me and to be able to uplift our parents as well as our providers.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne, what would one thing you would direct folks to?
Well, first, just thank you so much to you, Michelle, Christina, and Noni, for your leadership and everything that you do. The profile of the childcare crisis has only been elevated as a result of the pandemic. But what we know as problems associated with the childcare sector have been there for a very long time, from earnings of only $11 an hour for childcare workers, to the unaffordability for parents, to the rising costs of home-based providers, and a whole list of others that are too many to name right here, right now. While the challenges have been there, so are the solutions. And I mean, the solutions are within our communities. You all here who have joined us are the experienced experts with the ideas, the knowledge, the know-how that policymakers need to hear to shift policies in real meaningful ways for our communities. So I just encourage folks, again, to join us as childcare changemakers and to take action now by letting your legislators know why childcare funding is needed.
Awesome. So it looks like we're a little ahead on time. And so I was wondering if I could ask you, Joanne, one surprise question.
Absolutely.
So Katie from Louisiana commented that childcare feels like a no-brainer to so many of us. And I know we've kind of explained it, but maybe you could just dig a little bit deeper on why has legislation been so hard to pass to fund childcare nationally at the level that it's needed?
I think with COVID having shed a light on the broken system as it is, the lack of investments that have happened for decades, there are a long list of priorities, unfortunately, that have been competing for attention, for lack of better words. And because legislators know that all of these things need to be a part of the conversation, from childcare services to eviction protections, rental protections, food and nutrition, the list goes on. It's those priorities that have been kind of like, being piled on top of one another. And so I think we're at this stage where legislators on the Hill are eager to move on a COVID relief package. It's just a matter of to what degree, to what amount, and what actually takes priority.
Thank you so much for that. So, ladies, I'm going to bid you each adieu. I am so grateful that you were here to share again part of your story. Thank you very much, Noni, for being here. Have a wonderful day, and I cannot wait to see you again. Christy, thank you so much for sharing your heart and why you were so dedicated to this work and how you can't not go back, how you keep going back. I love that so much. Thank you so much, and I'll see you later. And Joanne, I hear we'll see you later on maybe another policy panel. I am so grateful for you being able to explain the really big policy things to us so that we can all understand. Thank you. So again, thank you very much to all of our panelists for being here and for getting all of those updates from Joanne from Congress and what Parent Voices is doing at the state level with Noni has and the impact in her childcare system and for providers like Christy. So I wanted to let you know, viewer, that you do have the chance to save childcare now. We're going to be dropping a link in the chat to our phone to action tool, and that's bit.ly/childcarevoices to contact your representative now. When you tell your legislatures to pass $57 billion in COVID relief, you are telling working mothers their work matters. You are telling families, we see you and we hear you. You are securing a spot for one of the 4.5 million children who would otherwise lose their care. And you are making sure that small businesses like home-based childcare providers won't have to close their doors to their communities. You're making your voices heard for a better tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us on this panel today. And I want to pass it back to you, Britannia and Wendeley.
Those were powerful stories and advice that really resonated with me. And I want to note that what these providers and parents revealed is not unique to their area. In my local community, we also ran out of childcare subsidy funding from April to October. And when it was reinstated, they offered $20 in hazard pay per month. Now, I'm grateful for their efforts, but that's $40 for our childcare program to survive on. And I can't make this stuff up. It just needs to change. We need more funding.
That's right. That sounds ridiculous. And this is exactly why we're urging Congress to put our families first and provide the much needed relief that we need in the childcare sector, that we need for our families and for our babies. We need $100 billion right now. And for those that are watching, we need your voice at the table. We need you to be part of this fight. It's the only way that we're going to be able to win. So please join us by going to the link that you are going to see very, very soon on the screen. And it will directly link you to your member of Congress so that you can make a call directly into them and urge them to make sure that they #save childcare and that we get this much needed $100 billion into our system. And now we want to turn it to all of you because I know that we've been getting some comments and questions from the chat. So we're going to pull some of those up and hopefully there are questions that will catch Britannia and I by surprise. So we can do a little bit of a back and forth now. What are some of the questions? Let's see them on the screen that we're getting from folks in the chat or comments. Well, maybe we can start actually while we wait. Yeah, childcare should be affordable and recognized as essential.
I agree with you. Yes, absolutely.
What does that mean to you, Britannia, as a provider, as a parent? What does it look like for childcare to be recognized as essential?
So, for so long, it has been the assumption that childcare workers are just glorified babysitters, and we have not gotten the respect that we deserve. Our industry is crucial to any community for economic stability, development, just in general. We support our communities and we're looking for our communities to support us. And so when we talk about essentiality, it's been on the forefront of everybody's mind throughout this pandemic, but we have always felt that essentiality in the work that we do. We impact the future generations of our nation, and we deserve respect for that. That's what it means to me.
Could not agree more. As one of our providers said that we work with in Ohio, childcare providers is a workforce behind the workforce, right? And we've experienced just through this pandemic how true that is and how important it is that we invest in the people that care for our babies and our families. We need to care for them too.
Exactly, a care economy. That's what we need.
Say more about that. What does a caring economy mean?
So, what a care economy looks like is exactly what you said, Wendalee. Caring for the people who care for our elders and our youth. If we don't have that as a community, what do we stand for? If we don't care about the future generations and the generations who have informed us with their wisdom, then we are not doing our nation justice. So, creating a care economy means building in social programs that help us take care of our communities. If you don't have a care economy, it's destined to fail. I'm just convinced.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've learned doing this work over the last few years is just how much the care workforce, the sort of work of caring, whether it is the paid and formal childcare or the informal caregiving that so many of us do for our children and our adults and our elders, is actually the labor of women. And in this country, women of color, and how important it is that we recognize the impact that this is having, the racial and gender dynamics, the fact that when we're talking about childcare, a universal, equitable childcare system, we're talking about a system that really works for the women that do the bearing of the babies and the nursing of the babies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I saw a post from Amber, and I wanted to say that yes, as a childcare business owner, we need to pay our staff well, and we need to train up young leaders who are wanting to pursue this career. But if they see that this career does not support them, we won't get that feedback. And so that's why we're here today, urging Congress to value childcare, to value our children, to invest in our kids so that we can have a better future.
That's right. So we're going to keep coming back to comments and questions from folks in the chat. So keep them coming. We'll put you up on the screen. We'll have a little back and forth about whatever you're saying, so that we can add a little bit of your own voice and strength into this conversation.
Oh, yeah. Patricia, I'm with you. Millennial debt. Oh, yeah. Parenthood. So much. Like looking forward to my children's future. I think like, what am I setting them up for? So that's why I'm taking action today, being an advocate for them, essentially. And that's what we need to do in our communities on any level. Any contribution to the cause is what we need today. So next up, we are headed to Oakland, California, where parents have been organizing to create an equitable childcare system. And
hi, I'm Tiara, the organizer with Parent Voice Oakland. I'm a parent and former preschool teacher. We won Measure C back in March to get money for parents and providers. We are now fighting to get it implemented. We have a child care crisis that needs to be addressed on a federal and local level.
Shanoski, I am president of the Peralta Federation of Teachers, AFT 1603. I'm a chemistry teacher at Merritt College. I am chair of the Commission on the Status of Women for the City of Berkeley. And I'm the mother of two kids, an 8-year-old and 11-year-old. I am also a parent leader with Parent Voices Oakland. Childcare is important to me because I've seen how the lack of affordable childcare negatively impacts kids and families, especially women, and especially single parent households like mine. I think that affordable childcare should be the right of everyone in the country, and especially in a progressive area like the East Bay. In Alameda County last spring, so many parents and community leaders and community organizations got together and worked so hard to pass Measure C to address the long-time childcare crisis that we have in the East Bay. It's really important to me that Measure C get implemented right away so that we can provide affordable and caring childcare for all families in Alameda County, and just managing the additional anxiety and stress associated with a global pandemic. Measure C money right now could make all the difference for families. So we urge the supervisors to start collecting this tax that voters approved last spring. Thank you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Stella Mosso. I'm recording this to join the million of voices that is agitating for Measure C to be implemented. I'm an educator, I'm an advocate, I'm a lover of young children, and I'm a volunteer with Parent Voices Oakland. The coronavirus pandemic has amplified the then need for childcare. As a childcare teacher, I'm required to go back to work at my center while my daughter is at home distant learning. The cheapest childcare I was able to find was someone known personally to me, and she watches my daughter from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. while I go to work. Childcare, in my opinion, is a human right. Thank you for listening, and I hope this voice is added to the millions of voices already crying out for Measure C. Thank you.
Yeah, so just want to say a little bit about Parent Voices Oakland and the Measure C fight, because it's such an important, I think, model fight for some of the other work that's moving across the country. So Parent Voices Oakland, as you heard from Noni, and these amazing women that are on the ground, the parents and the providers from Oakland and in Alameda County, the broader sort of Bay Area in California. In March of this year, they passed, together with a broad coalition of families, providers, healthcare workers, an initiative, Measure C, with overwhelming voter support. As a result, they will be generating $150 million a year that will provide much needed health and child care services in the Bay Area, that will raise the wages of child care workers, and that will have a real community voice. They've built into this initiative, the language of this initiative, the ability of community parents and providers to actually be able to do the proper implementation. So it's a really exciting opportunity for the communities in Alameda County, which just for bare reference, it's over 1 million people. So it's, Alameda County alone is sort of the population of some even bigger population than some of the states across the country.
Wow, I'm so glad that the community recognized that this is a need. And now that this pandemic has hit, it's probably even more necessary. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think amid the surge of COVID-19 cases, families, providers, and healthcare workers, and we've even seen a surge in children, right, that are coming up positive with COVID. The child care crisis only got worse, and we have to make sure that not only are we advocating for new revenue fights at the local and the state level, but that we're also fighting for more money at the federal, because we know it's going to take every bit of support that we can get to make sure that we actually have a system that works for all of us. And we want to make sure that we hold the city, the county board of supervisors accountable. There are many ways, right, that when that people can get in the way of community actually having a real voice, and the fight in Alameda is not over. And we want to make sure that this initiative, which was a community-driven initiative, they gathered the petitions, they got it on the ballot, they made sure that voters turned out in high numbers to vote for it, that the board of supervisors starts collecting the actual tax so they can start implementing this really important child care and healthcare initiative in that community.
Wow, that's great. So you guys hear it. Everybody needs to make that call to Congress for childcare. And if you have any questions, now is the time to ask. We want to hear from you. Drop your questions in the chat and we'll do our best to bring you answers. So just last week, Childcare Changemakers hosted a national soapbox to Congress and united parents, providers, and childcare supporters. We took to Zoom to tell our childcare truths, and here's what we had to say.
When I was living in Alabama, I paid about $6,000 a year for sending my child to a childcare center.
The cost of Eleanor's tuition is a bigger expense than our mortgage.
So I'm just having a hard time with finding childcare facilities that's actually open in this area.
I am a mother of twins, a first-time mother of twins, and when I looked at the prices of childcare in my area, it was not affordable on any means.
And the thing is because these parents cannot afford to pay me. So literally, I get paid in hugs and kisses.
And the families of those that are providing care for our children are doing the most important job of the entire possible community, which is growing leaders.
I have 16 years of experience having my own childcare, but over the years, it's been very difficult to stay doing what I'm doing.
They say, yes, you have your degree, but you're in childcare, and so you're basically a glorified babysitter.
But in the meantime, I am suffering and I'm opening myself up.
They don't have full enrollment, so they're not getting the revenue they need to stay afloat. And it's just like a sinking ship. And I'm so worried about what our families like myself want to do when it's safe to return to childcare and there aren't any left.
So I'm asking Congress to invest in our children, in early education and early care, and help us during this pandemic because we are struggling. As a childcare provider and a mother, I need help. And Congress, right now, you've got the solutions.
And any politician that frankly refuses to take care of their responsibilities as a legislator by passing childcare reform bills is not doing what we set them to Congress for.
That's right. And we also got awesome videos in Spanish that we'd like to show you now. So aquí vamos a ver lo que dicen nuestras compañeras y compañeros.
El Congreso no ha aprobado la ley de héroes número 2 y al no ser aprobada esta ley nos está afectando a nosotras las proveedoras de cuidado infantil.
Fueron y han sido muchos gastos que hemos tenido que hacer para ajustarnos y reacomodarnos y sacar adelante a estos niños.
Hay que comprar muchos materiales para limpiar la casa, para tener totalmente limpio el lugar en donde vamos a estar trabajando con los niños.
Sí les tengo internet, pero no para apoyar a 10 niños de clase.
Les recordaría que hace 2 años no tenemos ningún aumento en nuestras tarifas y los salarios mínimos han aumentado, pero nuestros ingresos no.
También recientemente hemos recibido muchos mensajes de proveedoras que han sido infectadas, ¿no?
Sí, y nosotros tenemos un riesgo más alto de contagiarnos que algunas otras personas.
En las tiendas nosotros no somos tratados como trabajadores esenciales, créeme que no.
Hay niños que como no están viniendo porque los papás están trabajando en casa, también los están poniendo a ellos en hold y obviamente eso es algo que perdemos esos niños nosotros.
El congresista, la persona que está tomando la decisión, que nos tome en serio nuestro trabajo.
Emocionalmente también necesitamos el apoyo.
Que nos den ese reconocimiento porque también somos esenciales.
Es que tengamos una aseguranza para proveedoras y empleados.
Principalmente también para esto de la vacuna, yo creo que nos deberían de tomar en cuenta porque somos esenciales.
Entonces, queremos pedirles al Congreso que tomen en cuenta todas estas situaciones que vivimos día a día, porque queremos que cuando se sienten a tomar la decisión de firmar esas propuestas de leyes, para nosotras nos tomen en cuenta.
Yes, childcare change makers, and a big shout out to all the folks that were featured in that video, sharing your powerful stories, being so vulnerable and real, and telling your childcare truths. They're so important. Up next, we're going to hear from an amazing organization in Minnesota, our partner, Isaiah, which is leading the charge for an equitable learning system in their state. To do that, they started a campaign called Kids Count on Us, which is organizing parent and childcare providers, primarily many from the Muslim community, and making sure that they have a voice in how the decisions are made about their childcare system. When COVID hit, Kids Count on Us held virtual meetings with providers across the state, where they decided to push for additional state funding to support these providers. In March, they got $30 million additionally from what was originally planned on top of the CARES Act resources to be able to do just that. So now we're going to hear from some of these awesome providers and their experiences, their fight, and their dreams for Kids Count on Us.
Hi, I'm Martha, and I'm a preschool special ed teacher and a mother of 2 young children.
Hi everyone, my name is Maria. I'm the director of Rainbow Child Development Center in St. Paul.
Right now, many teachers like me are working from home doing distance learning. Meanwhile, my colleagues who teach in childcare centers continue to provide essential in-person care to children and their families.
And I'm coming to you live from my office at 7 o'clock on Friday night because I spent the whole day today supporting teachers and children and families, and now I have to get all my bookkeeping done to make sure that payroll gets it on time, so everyone gets paid.
This pandemic has further exposed the need for full funding of childcare. Childcare centers are struggling to stay open. Many have had to lay off teachers or even close permanently.
So, just to give you a little bit about what we've been up to here at Rainbow. So our enrollment is probably down to about half of the kids that are attending. I would say about 90% of those families are considered essential employees. We are working hard to give kids the best possible experience, even in the most difficult of circumstances.
As parents, we know how critical childcare is to be able to work, pay the bills, and keep a roof over our heads. I believe every family, no matter the color of our skin, our zip code, or how much money we have, deserves for our children to have a safe and healthy place to learn and grow.
We've got 10 kiddos in distance learning, all from 10 different schools. We've got 10 kiddos on IEPs or IFSPs with the school district. Approximately 90% of our families are participating in some sort of scholarship or child care assistance program. And there are a lot of challenges out there for children, for families, and for teachers too. The average child care provider in Minnesota makes less than $10 an hour. And this is just unacceptable. It's not a living wage. We're working hard out here. And we want to be able to take care of our families too, the same way that we take care of yours.
Teachers need hazard pay and livable wages. And we need to expand childcare assistance so that all families can have access to the childcare we need. State funding has been keeping many centers afloat, and this funding is set to expire on December 31st if Senate leadership continues to stay silent.
We're looking for Minnesota to step it up, and we know we can do it if we do it together. So what do we want? We want affordable, accessible, high-quality early childhood education for every family in Minnesota. We can do it.
It's time to fully fund childcare.
Wow, even with additional funding from the state, providers still struggle. I mean, come on, Congress, it's time to act. And if you're a parent or a childcare provider who lives in Minnesota, just know that you can plug in. And Isaiah's We Make Minnesota's virtual event is your chance to build power with elected leaders and provide the vision for a government who cares for us.
That's right. If you are feeling these stories, if you feel like your story is so close, so similar, if you have questions, if you want to show some love, we want you to let us know in the chat. Put not just your name and a little bit about how you're feeling and what you're thinking, but tell us where you're from. We'll love to know where folks are tuning in from, so that we can bring you further into the conversation as we talk about some of the other states coming up. And now we're gonna open it up again for comments. So we're gonna see here. You want to read this one, Britannia?
I am in Missouri. Our states still have funds not allocated yet. Because they are waiting for a need, there is a need. The cities and towns, states, and government need to see that ECE is essential and funding needs to be allocated to all ECE providers across the nation. Oh, Samantha, I can't agree with you more. We have stakeholder in this. We care for the next generation, as I was saying. Wendy, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think the time to act is now, and I'll take the opportunity to plug in that we're talking a lot about the immediate crisis, right? We need immediate relief for our families, for providers. Right now, we're asking for $100 billion from Congress right now in order to ensure that some of the gaps are filled that as a result of the crisis have just only worsened. But we also need to look at long-term solutions. We need to actually pay attention to all the trends, all the patterns, and we need to make sure that we're not just trying to meet the status quo for where we were before, not the normal before COVID, but let's create a new normal that invests in our families, that invests in our children, that invests in our childcare providers, and that actually moves us closer to the kind of universal equitable system that really has all the sort of values-based things, right? That's grounded in value of community, for people, that works. And so I think as we're fighting for these short-term wins at the national, local, and state level, we also want to make sure that we're advancing the bigger conversation, right? Which is childcare is essential. Childcare needs to be a critical infrastructure of our economy, of our society, and it needs to be invested in long-term.
Absolutely. So shout out to everybody who's taken action so far. Calling your member of Congress may make you nervous if it's your first time, but time is running out and they need to hear from us. We cannot go any further into this pandemic being ignored. So let's go back to Michelle and have her show you how easy and fun it can be to take action right from your home.
Go to bit.ly/childcarevoices. On the left is a description of our campaign. On the right, you input your personal information. This connects you with the correct representatives. Make sure you put the phone number of the phone you will be using and be sure to turn off any silencers or blockers that will prevent the call from going through. When you're ready, click the big red button. Next, read the script and get your one line of why childcare is important to you. Then, click the next big red button. Our tool will now call you. Don't hang up. President-elect Biden might only have one rep, but you probably have 3. The system will have you call each, and it will auto-dial as soon as you are done with one. When you are finished, give yourself a pat on the back for speaking truth to power, and share with your friends. We made that easy too.
Awesome. And as we are entering our second hour of this live stream broadcast, I want to let you know that you can still act. Now we're going to have some awesome video of the impact that childcare crisis is having across the nation. Check it out.
Not only is childcare not affordable for most families, it's not racially equitable. Another thing is most childcare workers aren't valued. They're underpaid, undervalued, and way misunderstood.
We are the lowest paid professionals in the education industry.
I truly believe myself that not only is childcare essential, but we as providers, we push the economy. Because if you're safe going to work and you know that your child is safe in childcare, you're going to be okay.
Right now, I'm working alone. Why? Because my kids are not here, and I had to put my full-time staff member on an extended leave of absence, and then my part-time staff, I only give a couple of hours a day.
I'm a parent, childcare provider, and educator. To be exact, I'm a 4th generation childcare provider. My great-grandmother, grandmother, my mother, and now myself have all been childcare providers and educators. In addition to being a parent and a childcare provider, I'm a childcare advocate.
Bottom line, there will be no economic recovery for families without childcare. Childcare is the foundation of stable communities and upward mobility for working families. The sector was underfunded long before COVID-19, and without significant funding, many childcare providers will be forced to shut down.
I'm urging my representatives to make a substantial investment in childcare. Families need access to quality and accessible childcare now and prior to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Awesome. And welcome back. In this last hour, we heard from our policy talk and our childcare changemakers stories. Now we are so excited to go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I am so proud to announce Chanel Hunter. She is a fellow childcare changemaker and a fourth generation childcare provider who will be sharing the past, present, and future of childcare alongside her mother and daughters.
Thank you, Britannia. Hi, everyone. My name is Chanel Hunter. I am a fourth generational childcare provider. I'm here with my mother, and my two daughters. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. Mom?
Hello, my name is Shirley Evans.
Janae?
Hello, my name is Janae Davis.
And we have Layla doing a special guest appearance. So today we're here to have a conversation about our family legacy. We're 4 generations into childcare. My great-grandmother, my grandmother, myself, and my mother, and now my daughter. I'm asking her to come into this industry. Mom, can you tell us why you came into this industry?
I came into the industry because my mother was an educator and also a child care practitioner. And so when I came home from high school at 16, I had to come in the house and help my mother provide care for the children that she was caring for. And that's how I came in the business.
Okay. And so you had a family child care center and a center. Tell me what were some of your challenges?
Some of my challenges as a woman of color that owned a family child care center and a child care or commercial building, I found it very difficult to get funding to support my business. I found it very difficult to get at the table where decisions was being made about myself as a business owner. And so those were some of my challenges. I also found it was very, during my time, I didn't see many women that looked like me in leadership in the industry.
Okay. And how long were you in the industry as an owner yourself?
As an owner in childcare, I kind of raised you guys, got you through high school and through college and all of that stuff. I just feel like a dinosaur. I've been around forever, since 16, and I'm going on 16 again. So I've been around for a very, very long time. In terms of years, I would like to say probably over 35 years.
Okay. And so what were some of the successes you had as a child care provider?
As an advocate, I think that, I spent a lot of years, even though I was an owner and I was very active in my own personal business, I advocated, did a lot of work as an advocate. I was the person that would really go door to door. Like I confront people. I go knock on the door, going up to Harrisburg and fighting and saying, we want fair wages. We want to be able to get paid so that we can pay our employees. And then we want to be able to retire and live comfortable after we put many years in caring for families and their children. And also, I would like to say that child care is essential, because if people don't have anyone to care for their children, they can't go to work.
Absolutely.
So it's very, very important that Congress understand that they fund child care.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm definitely where you are, that Congress needs to fund child care. Myself, I own and operate Family Circle Academy here in Philadelphia, and I'm highly educated. I have 3 master's degrees, and I'm not in this industry because I have to be. I'm in this industry because I want to be. It's my family legacy, from my great-grandmother to my grandmother, my mother, and now myself. And I want to leave something to my daughters. I don't want to leave them in an industry that's poor, okay? Emotionally, going through this COVID has been exhausting as a provider, from not knowing where money is coming from to buy PPE equipment for the staff and the children that I serve, to not knowing if I'm going to be able to stay open because the funding is limited and not available. Excuse me. One of the other things is that 69% of centers that are open now and have been open during COVID, we're losing money, and it doesn't make sense for us to be open. 48% of childcare centers here in Pennsylvania have closed their doors permanently. And for me, we're 4 generations in. We want to extend
our family legacy to the fifth generation. I'm not sure how we can do that if we only have limited fundings from Congress. Janae, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts and why do you want to come into this industry?
So one reason why I want to come into this industry is because it's been passed down in my family for so long. This is basically what I grew up around since I was 12. This is basically what I know. I should know things from the back of my hand, third generation in. And I want to just do a lot of things. I want to do a lot of things. I love kids. I feel like being a child care provider gives you so many opportunities to the community, to family, to helping parents, young parents who just having kids and don't know which way to go or what to do, and just help with child development.
Nice. And so what are some of the things you think you want to change right now?
I think that I definitely do want to change wages. We do a lot as child care providers. We do a lot as um, in general. We do a lot in general. So I just think that we do a lot of trainings. We do a lot of backup. We have to keep a lot of our paperwork backed up, a lot of things together. So I just think that I want to bring a lot of good things to the community.
And what do you think about being a professional? As an educator, I'm always stressing how important it is to get education, Janae. And I know that you say all the time, what do you think they think about us in childcare?
I think that as far as when it comes to college, definitely, I can't even go to my regular colleges. Like, I know for me, coming out of high school, looking for what I wanted to do, this is all I knew was childcare. This is what I wanted to do. And when I really went, and I'm like, oh, I can't go to college. I can't do what I want to do. All I could get is a certification. It's not like I'm getting my master's or my bachelor's. It's things that I could get to that, but it's not a child care provider degree.
Okay. And so I think you're speaking to not being able to go to school and pay for school and then pay for taking care of yourself working in the childcare industry. That's not something that I want to leave as a legacy for my daughters. I want to make sure that my daughters are going to have livable wages. I want to make sure that they're going to be considered professionals. I want to make sure that as they go on and go to college and get their degrees, that they're going to come out of college and be able to sustain their families and not have to be on welfare benefits like majority of the staff that I employ. I hate that I can't give the staff that I employ livable wages for them to take care of their families when they're here at my facility taking care of other families. They're providing high quality care and they're getting paid less than someone that works at Target or less than someone that works at Walmart. Congress, how could this be? Ms. Stevens, tell me, what do you think are our next steps?
I think that it's essential that we continue to organize. I think it's essential that we continue to raise our voice. I think it's essential that we continue to, you have to demand what you want. That a lot of times we go quietly and we ask for things, but you have to push the door down. You have to say, you have to demand that, we want to be funded because we have to pay, like you just said, to your point, having to have funds to be able to pay your workers so that they don't have to get aid for the government. And then just to think of it that a child care practitioner is spending 7 to 8 hours a day in a site so that a mother can go to work at Target and that mother makes more money as a cashier ringing up people food, and the child care provider get paid less. That shouldn't be. I say you demand what you want. You have to continue to organize yourself. You have to continue to raise your voice, and you have to continue to unite. One of the things I like to say is that I often find that family daycare providers see themselves as a separate component. Groups see themselves as a separate component, and centers see themselves as a separate component. And what I would like to leave to the table when I'm somewhere laying on a beach and enjoying a cocktail, I want women in the childcare industry to know that we're not separate, that it's important to unite yourself, because it's important to say that, family daycare providers have a lot to deal with. I was a family daycare provider and I had to care for people's children and care for my family. Then I moved from my family to a site, and that's a big, huge move. And so I would like to see women who are in family, women who are in group and women who have centers. I would like to see those three different components unite and go to the congressman and push. And like I said, demand what you want. Don't just simply ask. You have to demand what you want.
Well, you guys, you've heard it first from family child care, generational. I'm sorry, you heard it from us over here. We're fourth generation. I'm hoping to bring my fifth generation, my daughters, into the industry. And so here's what I want to leave you guys with. I just want you guys to know that it's imperative that we are seen as essential. It's imperative that we're paid a livable wage. It's imperative that families are provided care when they need it, how they need it. We need to know that families are first, right? And not only the families that we're serving, we need to know the families that are actually providing the service. I want to make sure that I'm making sure that you really understand that. And I just want to say to Congress now, I want to see that the tables, my families and the families we serve are able to get all that they need from childcare. Please call your legislators now if you can. Thank you, Britannia.
Great. Thank you, Chanel and Shirley and Janae and Layla, for your generational wisdom. We must not just ask, we must demand what we need. That is right. What an amazing and powerful family of
Absolutely. Yes, I am with everything that Chanel and her family are saying. As another woman of color, I am seeing this as a building block for my family to accrue this generational wealth that's been lacking. And it's not like she said, it's not that we are, we chose to be in this. We chose to take care of our communities through childcare, through education. And it is imperative, like she said, that we get the funding that we deserve. We get the support of our community, and we need to demand it from Congress. So her call to action is so valid. If you had some time right now, like, you could make this call. It's so easy. And we need your help. We can't do this without you guys. Call your local congressman and tell them to give childcare the money that they deserve.
That's right. One of the things that really resonated with me, Britannia, and you probably agree with this, is just like how clearly this caring work is like the labor of love for this family, right? Like, I love how Chanel is like talking about how she could do anything else. She has probably the education to qualify for just about any other industry that she might want to go into. But she is choosing actively, explicitly, to be a childcare provider. And it's something that she wants to pass on to her daughters, just like the women before her and her family passed it on to her. And I've often actually heard this from providers, like, this is the labor of love. Like, we get paid. The women in this room earlier was saying, I get paid with kisses and hugs because unfortunately our pay is so subpar. Can you tell us a little bit more as a provider? Like, what does that mean? That this is the labor? What kind of love do you get from the children?
So, yeah, exactly. The love that I get and give to the children and families that I serve, really, it is so fulfilling on a soul level. But for like paying the bills, it does not. And that is where I am currently like advocating that childcare be recognized as a business. And we need to come together as childcare providers and parents, especially. Support your local childcare provider because they need your help. When we talk about like what the childcare salaries are in Texas alone, a salary for a childcare worker is $20,000 a year. And if we're talking about that in the context of this pandemic, then we are severely underfunded. We can't even pay our bills with that. And let alone our communities want high quality childcare. We need more funding to make sure our programs have exactly that.
Yeah. And so I am a new, I've been an auntie for a long time, but I have an almost, in 2 days, 7-month-old nephew, Gael. and he was born in the pandemic, and it's been, probably similar to how it is for you, like, and, you said this, like, it takes a village, right, to raise a baby.
Absolutely.
And Hennessy's my sister. She's not working right now. She hasn't been able to get back to work because she lost her job as a result of the pandemic. But it's also turned out to be a bit of a blessing, right, to be able to be at home with her newborn baby. And it also takes so many more from so many of us to be able to actually support her and him, and be able to actually provide him with the care and the love and every, like, the attention, right? Like, this kid needs attention.
Yeah.
And I just, I hope to be a mom one day. And as I think about, as I watch them, as I sort of spend time with him and have to figure out how to support them, how do I do it? How do I strike this balance between a job that I love, that takes so much of me, and also raising a family and raising babies and giving the babies all the attention. And I know that this is the decision so many parents, so many moms have to face, right? Like, it's often a choice between doing labor that you love and doing the labor of love.
Absolutely. And that's what led me to create my own family childcare home and create this atmosphere that goes into the mantra that it takes a village to raise a child. And at my childcare program, Our Loving Village, we do just that. We focus on uniting parents with the people who take care of their children every day. We are creating a care economy from the grassroots, and we want other people to be involved in the development of our children for the sake of our communities. So exactly what you're saying, we need all the aunties, we need the moms, we need the community leaders to be involved and raise their voices for childcare, because we cannot do this alone. It's so important to stress.
Yeah. One of the comments that I just saw come on the screen was about how some of the providers have had to make really tough choices, right? Some had to close because of COVID and some had remained open. What was your experience with COVID? Remaining open? Did you ever close? Like, what was the whole process for you?
Wow, it has been a struggle among different things that happen with just like landlord issues, running a family childcare home, and just relocating to a new area. My childcare program has actually been trying to serve our community, but one of the things that I found is that it's not just about providers being able to be open. Yes, accessibility is very important, but our families are struggling just to make ends meet. No matter if I lowered my tuition costs, they still couldn't pay. I enrolled several families who were needing crucial care services, a mom of twins just like me, and they could not afford to keep it going. And I wanted to do so much to help them, but at the end of the day, it comes back. There's this domino effect of childcare. And if one pillar falls, the rest of them will. So that's why we need to take action tonight. If you are here with us, call your local congressman so that we can get this real funding for childcare.
Yeah, and this is exactly what's at stake. It's at stake for our future, our present,
Yes.
and as Chanel and her family reminded us, the future. So
yeah, so powerful. And up next, we have this short testimony from our friends at Mainstream Alliance. And then we're going to turn it over to our good friends, Brenda and Vic from Olay. So they'll be joining us from New Mexico live.
Small business owners know how important childcare is both to themselves and their employees. The industry is in crisis. We need at least $50 billion to support childcare centers, not only for those small businesses, but for the millions of parents and employees of our nation's small businesses in every industry.
Hey everyone, I'm Brenda.
Hi, I'm Vic, and I'm with Olay, organizers in the Land of Enchantment here in New Mexico.
We're organizing to pass a constitutional amendment that would allow every family who wants childcare to have guaranteed access to it.
Mm-hmm. And so we organize parents, teachers, and allied workers to fight for the access, funding, and dignity our communities deserve.
And we have been working with an incredible group of early childhood educators who are fighting for living wages, paid sick leave, and respect for childcare workers and truly affordable childcare for New Mexico's families.
So here are some of our members who recorded their stories and experiences organizing online with us.
Hello, my name is Zenobia and I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I have been an early educator for about 11 years.
My name is Ivy Dalmarachu. I'm from Zuni, New Mexico and reside in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am a mother of 4 sons. I've been working with children and families for more than 30 years. For half of those years, I've been working as an early childhood educator at a daycare center.
There are too many early educators getting paid very little and undervalued. We are not considered teachers like public and private school teachers, and this needs to change.
I joined the OLE New Mexico organization in August so that I can assist in empowering the childcare workers and to advocate for them.
I learned that early educators make $9.66 an hour, and this is unacceptable. There was a time in my career that my husband decided to go back to school for a career change. This meant that we were just on my income, and it was a struggle. There was times that we were unable to pay our bills.
As educators, we are the anchor for many working families, and we deserve increased wages so that we can earn what our duty demands.
Now, during the pandemic, early educators are essential workers, taking care of students of doctors, nurses, and other essential workers. And I have learned that when early educators' classrooms or centers are closed, they are not receiving paid sick leave, and this is unacceptable.
Being an educator during the COVID-19 pandemic has been a challenge, but out of this chaos, early childhood workers were deemed essential workers, which is like a recognition to us because we are considered babysitters and not teachers. Becoming an essential worker required changes and extra duties within childcare centers and childcare home centers.
During the pandemic, what I have seen change is my kids are doing online learning, and it can be a struggle for them being on the computer throughout the day.
As early childhood educators, we are requesting for increased wages so that we can continue to work in our careers that we love so much, which is working with children and families.
And the only way that we can combat the COVID is to make sure that everyone, especially early educators, receive paid sick leave.
With a pay increase, we can also take care of our families financially because love does not pay bills.
Mi nombre es Karina Pizarro. Soy mamá y maestra de educación temprana. Actualmente vivo en Albuquerque, Nuevo México, y tengo 4 años trabajando con niños.
Hola, mi nombre es Alma Martel. Vivo en Albuquerque, Nuevo México. Soy madre de familia, estudiante en Asociado de Educación Temprana. Me impactaría demasiado cómo la ayuda a la educación temprana con $100 mil millones fuera algo fenomenal. Ayudaría demasiado a cómo instruir, a cómo seguir educando a nuestras maestras, inclusive a mí misma.
Es necesario en estos momentos es de que se nos otorgue un cambio significativo en los beneficios laborales que deberíamos de tener las maestras de educación temprana, ya que considero que merecemos un mejor salario, un salario justo.
De tener sus salarios justos, de tener su pago por enfermedad, para que puedan estar sanas y puedan estar en buenas condiciones para que puedan educar a estos niños. Eso sería algo muy importante.
Esto nos ayudaría a que dieran más presupuesto a centros de educación infantil para que se nos proporcionara un mayor salario, un mejor salario, para que se nos proporcionaran días por enfermedad y mayores beneficios, porque básicamente es una profesión olvidada, es una profesión que está transparente, no, nadie la mira, nadie la ve, nadie aboga más que nosotros por los derechos laborales que creo que merecemos. Merecemos un mejor salario y mejores beneficios laborales, y esos $100 millones creo que los merecemos. Creo que deberíamos estar incluidas en ese presupuesto. Muchas gracias.
A que electos oficiales ya, a que nos apoyen, a que digan sí a todas nuestras peticiones, porque es por un buen futuro para nuestros niños, es un buen futuro para todos en general. Ustedes están ahí para representarnos, ustedes están ahí para apoyarnos. Con nuestra ayuda, ustedes fueron elegidos para estar en esas posiciones. Entonces, yo les pido de favor que nos apoyen. Quisiera de todo corazón que nos apoyaran con estos fondos para poder lograr todo lo que se tiene que lograr. Gracias.
So powerful. And so we believe that we're on the brink of making New Mexico the first state in the union to make childcare a constitutional guarantee for our families. And we know it's going to be an uphill climb to get this passed in the state house next year in January. But it will be transformative. If you live in New Mexico and want to join the fight, use this link in the chat to get involved. It's about access for kids. It's about stabilizing community childcare, and it's about living wages for childcare workers. We know these issues, the issues early childhood educators and their parents are facing are not isolated to New Mexico. So we're calling on Congress to pass childcare funding and a $100 billion investment. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That's right. It's amazing. I'm really excited for not just the fight that's about to happen in New Mexico, which is really a culmination of 11 amazing years of organizing, of building the base of providers and parents to fight for themselves, to fight for their rights in the state of New Mexico. We know how important these fights are. And not only did they win hazard pay, not only did they set an example for other states to follow as soon as COVID hit, now they're on the brink of a transformative fight that will drive major investments to childcare for families and providers in the state of New Mexico. So really, really exciting work. Now we want to head over to Michigan. Mothering Justice is a statewide mama-led Black mama-led organization of parents, providers, allies, really committed to advocating for rights of parents, for the issues that matter to mamas in the state of Michigan. They were instrumental in a lot of the fights this past year around state revenue for childcare, getting out the vote. And we know that the fight there is nowhere near the end, and that there's a lot more that is needed at the state level, at the federal level, to be able to provide for these parents and these mamas. So now we're going to hear from some of the awesome women that are doing this work on the ground.
Hey y'all, it's Oriana here in Michigan with Mothering Justice, and we are a statewide Black mama-led organization focused on building the leadership of mothers and caregivers of color, as well as fighting for policy change that uplifts and supports both mamas and families. This year has been really rough, for some more than others. But with all the pain that 2020 has brought us, it's also given us an opportunity to focus in on what's most important, like community, health, and family. At Mothering Justice, we believe that no one epitomizes those values quite like our caregivers. COVID-19 has helped our country to see how important taking care of one another truly is. From our first responders to our hospital heroes and all of our essential workers. But unfortunately, this pandemic has also magnified some really ugly injustices. While big corporations and their billionaire owners are being compensated for possible loss from our government, small business leaders like childcare providers are left to struggle and suffer with little and in many cases no investment or protection. All 8 of Michigan billionaires have seen an increase in wealth since the start of the pandemic, and hundreds of providers have had to close their doors for good. Before COVID, the childcare sector had been undervalued and underinvested in, particularly because 90% of its owners and workforce are women of color. We will not stand by and let the workforce that supports our economy and our heroes be ignored and forgotten about, while billionaires see record increase with no investments into the communities that they benefit from. So we are teaming up with some local Detroit providers and activists from Providers for Change to tell Congress that we need substantial investment to protect our providers and our families. Now is the time for radical care that takes care of our caregivers first. Now I want to give you all an opportunity to hear from some of these amazing women.
I'm LaTanya Glover, the owner of Bright Beginnings Home Child Care in Detroit, and I've been partnering with families to provide quality care and early education for children for the last 10 years. The onset of the COVID-19 health pandemic was very scary. There was a lot of unknown, a lot of uncertainty. We saw our enrollment go as low as 0 for several months. It was very difficult for us to find the supplies that we needed, masks, gloves, cleaning supplies. It had a devastating effect on families who were immediately placed out of work. It wasn't something that anyone could see coming. We definitely saw the impact that it had on the children. They missed, the opportunity to be with their friends, to be in care. Yeah, the little to no enrollment took a direct toll on our finances. We had to worry about paying staff members, covering the cost of utilities. I know that the COVID-19 pandemic definitely shed a light on some of the disparities and inequalities that already existed in early childhood care, and especially as it relates to the wages and the rates that are paid. We, as childcare providers and early childhood educators, need to obtain rates that are fair, that are equitable, and that allow us to provide fair wages for our staff members and to operate high quality programs. All of those things require funding. So one thing that I definitely would love for lawmakers and legislators to understand is how vital and how essential childcare is to the recovery of our economy. There simply is no recovery without childcare. We definitely need people to realize the importance of the child care providers' role in early childhood educators and the impact that they have on essential workers. We are essential workers, but how we support other essential workers and how critical we are to the framework of the economy and how much we need to be supported in order for us to rebuild as a city, as a state, and as a nation.
Yep. Some awesome women doing great work on the ground in Michigan. I wanted to invite you all to put some questions, some comments, show us some love. We'd love to see your name and your comments pop up on the screen. We're going to take a few minutes now to pop them up on the screen and put something provocative for Britannia and I to talk about. Britannia, what do you think about some of this awesome work that's happening in Michigan?
People who are organizing with Michigan right now with their Mothering Justice organization, it really speaks to me because they're advocating on behalf of people like me. I'm a Black mother, and this is my first time, my first rodeo, and I had twins. So I need as many people who are allies in the fight for my children as possible. So I'm so grateful that in Michigan they have Mothering Justice, because we really do need to amplify the voices of the people that we serve in our community to make sure that our children have the best possible outcomes. It's too important to miss. And that's why I really want to urge you guys, take action with us. We can't do it alone. Childcare is essential. We need everybody hands on deck telling our congresspeople that you all need funding for childcare. We all need to survive this pandemic, and the Congress will be going on holiday break, but it won't be great for us families. And so I want you guys to take action with us. It'll be the best thing we can do.
That's right. And we also encourage you, again, in the chat to put where you're from, put your state, even if you want to get as specific as your rural community or your city, so that folks that are doing the work on the ground with these organizations, whether it is in Michigan or in California or in New Mexico, or in Minnesota, the four states that you've heard from today are able to get in touch with you and connect with you. So don't hesitate to reach out and let us know where you're tuning in from. And again, put your questions, your comments in the chat, because we're going to be talking about some of these things, Britannia and I, over the next few minutes. I have a question for you, Britannia. Really, it's a question for us to debate a little bit.
Okay.
So one of the things that we've noticed, and we heard some of this from Mariana in Michigan and Vic and Brenda from New Mexico. We've had to. Everything has changed since COVID, right?
Yes.
The way that we do everything has changed. As someone who has to work remotely from my home, I sort of feel that every day, every minute of every day, just how much things have changed. And I know that is true for most people across the country. And one of the things that we've had to do in order to continue to build our movement for childcare and be able to connect with parents and providers is to go where they are, right? And right now, a lot of that is happening online. So we've had to really adjust and iterate our organizing to make sure that we're actually organized using all these digital tools, using Facebook, using Outvote, using apps, using Instagram and Twitter and all the ways, all the things digitally to make sure that we're connecting with folks and bringing folks into the movement. How did you get connected to Changemakers? Because I know you got connected in a very interesting way.
Yes. So Childcare Changemakers is really doing something very different than anything that I've ever seen. So they use this digital world that we're in right now. We're all thrusted in it. And they have harnessed relational organizing, which I really love. And actually, someone reached out to me just starting the conversation, acknowledging the struggles that I'm going through and telling me, hey, you can get connected with a group of other parents and providers and supporters who are backing you up, standing in solidarity, ready to take action with you. And that was one of the things that really reeled me in, empowered me to be an agent of change in my community. I had already been advocating for parents and families in my local community, but this was so important. It was so much better because Childcare Changemakers gave me the resources I needed to be able to go and talk to other people, to have the strategy of using this moment that we're in, this political moment, to have real change for childcare. And so that's really important when we talk about telling people what's next, what's going to come next. We need to keep our ear to the ground. We need to be listening to the needs of our community, and we need to act so that we can get what we need for our communities.
That's right. So one of the things
oh, we got a question.
Very Ignatius. This is one of the awesome things that's happening through the chat. Folks are trying to get connected to the local organizations that are engaging providers and parents in their communities. So keep it going. Direct questions to the organizers are in the chat because we know that there are lots of organizers that are connected, monitoring all of your engagement and making sure that we're able to plug you into some of the local and federal fight that we're in. Do you want to read this one?
Oh, yeah. It says that Parent Voices in San Francisco helped to pass a ballot initiative that created a new source of funding for early childhood care and education. I think that's amazing because that's exactly what I'm trying to do in my rural Texas community. We need more people to invest in our early childhood programs that support education and access to care that will boost our economy. So, yes, thank you guys.
Yeah. So, I live in a big city in New York. I live in the Bronx, but it's still part of the big infrastructure of an urban community, many urban communities. But you are from a rural place in Texas, all places. What's it like, right? Because I know a lot of the times we hear from folks that work with in rural communities about some of the challenges around access, around geographic reach, around having culturally competent providers that are close to people's houses. Just what is the urban experience like in rural Texas? The rural experience like in rural Texas around access for childcare.
Yeah, so rural areas really have a lack of access to a lot of things. We have a lack of access to healthcare. Currently, the city that I live in is a food desert. We have one local store, and it's been crazy throughout this pandemic to see just how much my community has pulled together to provide what we need. And so, in rural areas, we need to address, like as a nation, what we can do to support people who are living in every zip code so that they can have access to childcare, healthcare services, because all of these things overlap. We also need to evaluate our education system. I know many teachers in my area rely on childcare, and that's one of the things that has been few and far between in rural areas. There are 10 childcare providers in my county alone, although there are 695 children who need to be served. Most of those childcare programs are just like me, family childcare providers who are asking to serve their community, but we are running into roadblocks with funding, keeping our programs quality, and we need to invest in our rural areas. Childcare is a great economic stabilizer for any community, and I can't urge that enough. So when we have people who have our best interests in places of power, we can get the money that we need to support our community. And then we'll be able to better our community. And we'll start by educating our youth and caring for them in the best possible way. And we need your help. So again, like if you guys are in your local areas, support your local childcare providers, your teachers, educators on all levels, because it's going to take a village to raise a child.
Yeah. I want to talk about, I know I keep bugging you about this long-term thing, but one of the things that we often hear from folks, right, it's like we need funding to go into childcare system because it is drastically underfunded. But we also know that there are other issues, right, because of crisis. It's just not just because there isn't enough resources, but because also we need real structural changes, right? We need better protections and wages for providers. We need to make sure that there are actual accessibility to parents of all backgrounds in all locations, rural and urban and otherwise.
Yes.
We need to make sure that people aren't paying like ridiculous percentages of their income on childcare. Can we talk a little bit more about that? Like, I want us to get into like an envisioning place. Like, what is the ideal childcare system feel like? What does it look like?
Awesome. So, what I've envisioned for our Loving Village, my childcare program, is to really encompass meeting the need of our rural communities. And so the long-term situation is going to have to start with our local community recognizing that not only is childcare a business, we are also a community utility. Childcare is something that every community needs. If we want parents to feel supported to stay in our local communities, we need them to feel supported with their children. And so when you talk about our living wages and being culturally appropriate, we have to be very understanding of the populations that we serve. And so when you get to the position to think about childcare in the long term, think about it as a parent, as a provider. What are we going through? What do we need? Listening to people like we've heard today is one of the greatest ways to do so. And long-term funding looks like investing in the infrastructure of the childcare business. And so that's what we are urging our communities to do. Invest in our kids and invest in the childcare and early childcare education movement.
That's right. And I think we're just in such I think such an important time for this opportunity, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not like the childcare crisis didn't exist before COVID, right? It's not like it didn't exist before now. But I think what is different now about this moment is that we're seeing so much attention at the national level, right? We're seeing that Congress is paying attention. We're seeing that President-elect Biden, has put forth a very bold, ambitious plan. He put it out over the summer, this past summer. We're seeing that media is starting to really pay attention, right? We're seeing it in the Child Care Essential Act. We're seeing it in the, which is the one that passed in the House this past summer, asking for $57 million to go into the child care industry. We don't need more than that, 100 million. But we're also seeing the child care for working families, which is trying to move us into an entitlement program for childcare, similar to how Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare entitlement programs. And that's exciting, right? It's exciting to see that the conversation is moving so much at the national level, that we're getting the attention that we need, that we deserve. I also know that we've gotten the stories of providers and parents that are sort of directly impacted by this crisis really featured. And so it just feels like this momentum building, right? Like it feels like this labor that has been undervalued and invisible for so long is finally getting seen and recognized. And I think part of what's exciting about this moment is we got to take it to the next level. Like now that this is part of the federal conversation, right? As like the first panel earlier, for those that were joining us earlier for the federal policy panel, we're talking about, we're seeing that, like oftentimes childcare gets under prioritized over some of the other things. And I think this immediate crisis is demonstrating to us just how important it is that we're prioritizing childcare in terms of federal funding.
Absolutely. We need to amplify our voices. And just like you were saying, we need to have our seat at the table. Not only just have it, claim it, demand it, and maintain it. That means we need to be informed on what will work best for our communities. And we also need to brainstorm solutions to the problems that we face. And so, just as you were saying, we are all coming together. Childcare Changemakers movement is is growing faster than ever. And it has been such a privilege to be able to engage with people in our national calls on Zoom throughout this pandemic. You'll hear a lot of people who are very passionate about the work that they do, parents and providers supporting each other through this pandemic. And there's nothing better than just this community that we're building. Thank you so much to Community Change Action for making this possible. And without other people's voices in this mix, we will not have the change that we need to get to a better childcare system that encompasses childcare providers, workers getting paid living wages, an equitable childcare system that is also culturally appropriate for our communities. We need that. And this is the moment. This is the moment to do it.
That's right. So we're gonna switch gears because we have some more awesome, powerful women that are gonna be coming to talk to you all soon. Again, keep those comments and questions in the chat because we're gonna come back to them after this next panel. But first, I want to say we are so excited for these wins, right? We've heard about some of these local wins in New Mexico and Michigan and California and Minnesota. We've heard about what it looks like to ground a generational wealth building lens into our childcare system from the powerful women in Pennsylvania. And up next, we're going to hear from some of the really incredible work that is happening locally in my home city and state in New York. But first, let's watch a few short clips from Laura and Marisolia, two of the powerful moms that are doing some of this local organizing. And then we're going to kick it to the panel.
Mi nombre es Marisolia Herrera, madre cabeza de familia de Juanita Kirama Herrera, de 6 años de edad. En el hogar infantil encontré un gran apoyo en el cual le han enseñado a mi hija a ser responsable, carismática y una excelente persona. En él le brindan una excelente educación y por él puedo yo desempeñar mi labor para poder entregarle a ella lo que necesita, tanto como comida, hogar, servicios y poder darle una excelente educación. Les agradezco por ese amor y ese apoyo incondicional que tienen para nosotros.
Mi nombre es Laura Chavarría. Como madre soltera de 2 niños, uno de 5 años y otro de 9 años, encontré en el cuidado infantil la respuesta positiva para poder trabajar, sacar a mis niños adelante y sobre todo resalto la gran influencia positiva que le han brindado en este hogar de cuidado infantil a mis niños, en su desarrollo educacional, social y emocional. Como madre apoyo el cuidado infantil y el gran valor que aporta a la comunidad de bajos ingresos y a familias como la mía.
What powerful stories. I can't get enough of them. So beautiful. We're going to now dive deeper into some of the organizing that is happening in New York. We're going to have an awesome panel that is going to be moderated by Rebecca Gonzalez. She's a provider and a childcare change maker. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, everyone. Wasn't those videos powerful? If parents cannot go to work, they cannot bring their kids to the programs. Therefore, providers cannot get paid. It's a cycle that needs more funds and attention. Childcare is the backbone of the economy. And this brings me to our next panel. In a second, I will introduce our panelists for an exciting conversation among a New York City provider and childcare supporters about the local efforts in New York to defend childcare and how it connects to the federal fight to win childcare funding. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Gonzalez. I am a childcare provider in New York City. I am an organizer with Childcare Changemaker. I am a board member of EC on the Move and All Our Kin. Last but not least, a member of Empire State Childcare Campaign. First, we have Gladys Johns. Gladys has been an early educator in a residential setting for 17 years in Staten Island, New York. She is the founder of CC on the Move Network, which is a powerful movement of 600 organized family childcare providers based in New York City. Joanne Canyon is a federal policy advocate and has focused on economic justice issues ranging from workforce development policing and child care through our legislative and administrative advocacy. Christy Balkin is the policy director for All Our Kim, which provide licensing, business, and quality support for family childcare providers in the Bronx, New York. Diddy Hill is the director of the policy for the Child Center for Analysis and Advocacy in the areas of family economic security and early care and learning, and she co-facilitates Empire State campaign for childcare in addition to the governor's task force for childcare committee. And now to my co-moderator, Nina Daster.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nina Doster. I'm a consultant with Community Change, and I'm so excited to dive in with this great panel tonight. We just heard why childcare is so important to New York parents, but what's being done to support the childcare workforce in New York during the pandemic? Gladys, you work with a network of more than 600 family childcare providers here in New York City. What's been happening to them since the pandemic started last March?
Well, if I were to describe the world's condition, I would describe it as we are not only in the same boat, we are all in the same storm. Some in yachts, some in canoes, and childcare drowning. Inequalities define childcare. The pandemic has highlighted the broken systems. I work with 600 plus family childcare providers growing and dying. We have come together to support each other. I see and hear of closures every day. Providers selling their years of toys, equipment, a part of their lives are gone. Mostly tears fill our days, not woe me, just our reality. Low enrollment or no enrollments. City agencies are still closed, working remotely. During the beginning of pandemic, family child care escaped for the most part the outbreak, but the intake of school-aged children hybrid learning has brought the disease into providers' residents. Now more outbreaks with no PPE, no guidance, no money, bombardments of written mandates. Many providers suffering their own family foods insecurities, afraid of being in the streets if not already. We are not unique. This is the story nationwide. Investment in the providers and families must be made. We are suffering. Thank you.
Gladys, is so devastating. And Dee Dee, the providers that Gladys works with are centered in New York City, but how were the child care providers and parents in the other parts of the state affected by the pandemic? Are they faring any better?
They are not. While New York City was certainly the early epicenter of the pandemic, child care providers and the families that they serve across the state have been hit really hard by the pandemic. In an October survey of 10,000 of 10,000 of New York's 18,000 licensed providers, just 86% reported being open. And of those that are open, all are operating at sharply reduced capacity, as Gladys mentioned. On average, across the state, providers are operating at about 40% capacity. And as all the providers who are watching know very well, the childcare business model barely works when providers are at 100% capacity. So with New York providers going on 10 months at less than 50% capacity, it's unsustainable. And at the same time, across all of the state, New York families, particularly families with young children, they're facing tremendous housing challenges, food insecurity, and a dramatic growth in poverty. In a fall report, the United Hospital Fund estimated that just between March and July of 2020, 325,000 New York children were pushed into poverty or near poverty. And that's on top of the 700,000 that entered the pandemic experiencing poverty. And So all of this is to say that federal support for childcare is critical across the whole state of New York, and we know across the whole country.
Yeah, so let's talk about what the solutions are to these, drastic circumstances. Christy, Congress provided $3.5 billion in relief nationwide for the child care sector through the CARES Act back in March. How did that round of federal relief help to address the challenges facing providers in New York?
Well, I have to say, New York State received one of the largest chunks of money through CARES child care funding. But New York State has 18,000 child care providers statewide. And the money we received averaged to about $9,000 per provider. If you can imagine, as Dee Dee said, the money was simply not sustainable. Hasn't been sustainable over the last 9 or 10 months. If you're operating a business at 40% capacity and you receive $1,000 per month, that's not going to get you very far. Of course, these were based on the size of the provider. Family child care providers like the ones I work with received much smaller grants from the state than centers. One of the most helpful things that the state did with that funding was initially they provided funding to providers based on pre-pandemic enrollment rather than based on attendance during the pandemic. We talk about rebuilding the child care system, building a better system, and that's one feature that we'd like to be able to take into the future with us. The state also provided grants for family child care and for centers. We had some hiccups with those and hope to avoid those hiccups going forward with the next round of funding by having a group of child care stakeholders collaborate with the state to design programs that will be really effective for child care providers and parents going forward.
So thank you, Christy, for shouting out 18,000 providers in the state, and we need more money, right? So political moments we are in. What is moving or not moving on the ground in New York State? Joanne, the problems that Gladys, Diddy, and Christy described aren't unique to New York, are they?
We've seen and heard the challenges and barriers that so many parents, providers, and educators have experienced as essential workers from coast to coast and everywhere in between, including what Gladys, Dee Dee, and Christy have described: low to no enrollment, the impacts of weighing enrollment versus actual attendance, closures, the domino effect of housing and food insecurity, and how so many women of color have been continuously excluded and left with minimal to no resources. Individuals who have been directly impacted need to have a seat at the table when decisions are being made for these very reasons, because of what's happening locally on the ground. And it's because of these challenges and the reality that childcare is and remains the backbone of our economy that elected officials, your U.S. House representatives, your U.S. senators need to know why immediate COVID relief and why a longer, bolder investment for the childcare sector matters. With this political moment that we're in, Congress is currently negotiating what could potentially be the next COVID relief package for the next 4 months. What's included, what's left out. And with competing priorities that are currently on the table for negotiations, shrinking the pool of funds that have been the starting point, we want to make sure that we've done everything possible in our advocacy across the board and through our movement to make sure that childcare remains a top priority.
Thank you, Joanne, for remarking that we need childcare providers to sit at the table. Diddy, what would significant federal relief means for parents and providers in New York?
So significant federal relief, it could make a world of difference for New York child care providers and to the families that rely on them. As many have already testified, without significant relief, we could see thousands of New York providers close in the next 6 months, and thousands of experienced educators leave the field. We know from a fall survey by the National Association of the Education of Young Children that I've seen many folks chatting about. Here in New York, 62% of providers reported that they are losing money every day that they stay open. 61% are pulling from their personal savings or putting charges on their personal credit cards to keep going. 40% of home-based providers expect to close within 3 months if enrollment remains as low as it is, or if there's no significant relief. And at the same time, we know that without federal relief and without federal relief soon, thousands of New York families who are, as I mentioned earlier, facing mounting economic insecurity because of months of reduced hours and having experienced furloughs and pay cuts. Many are going to be forced to withdraw their children from quality childcare, from the childcare providers they love and rely upon. And we know, and as Christy mentioned, already in New York, early in the pandemic, counties, we have a county-based subsidy system. Counties were able to offer families some relief in terms of waiving copays and raising eligibility for subsidy to 85% of the state median income, and to providers, as Christy mentioned, by allowing payment based on pre-pandemic enrollment rather than children in the seat. But now counties are running out of funds. And so just as families are hitting the end of their savings, they're hitting, all their bills are coming due, they are also losing the support and relief of being relieved of the having to pay for copays or being able to access childcare if they're higher income, but still needing that support. On the other hand, with significant federal aid, New York is positioned not just to save and stabilize its existing provider base, not just to save and stabilize the existing system, but we are positioned to use those funds as building blocks to creating a more unified, equitable, effective system. About 18 months ago, the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo, he convened a child care availability task force on which I sit, and the recommendations are scheduled to be released in just a few weeks in the new year. And at this stage in the drafting, the recommendations, they're ambitious and they're comprehensive, and if they're implemented and funded, they could put New York on a path to provide equitable access to childcare to all New York families that need it, and to pay childcare educators fair wages that reflect the critical importance of their work. Federal funds could help put New York on a transformative path. We have a real opportunity to truly build back our system better. So we're very hopeful, and the need is urgent.
So Joanne, let's recap then. Where are the negotiations in Congress over another round of federal relief that New York and so many other states need? And what role does Senator Schumer from New York play in those negotiations?
Yeah, it's been 9 months since Congress passed its last COVID relief package, and folks are still very much divided on what to fund and at what levels, despite the fact that this pandemic has left our childcare sector seeing an increase of 70% in costs for home-based family childcare, the potential of seeing 4.5 million childcare spots lost because of closures and the lack of resources that have already been named. Not to mention the huge ripple effect, especially on workers, families, and the overall economy. And despite all of this, negotiations on Capitol Hill have gone so far as to say that $908 billion is the ballpark figure as a starting point of working towards another COVID relief package. And of this $908 billion, $10 billion would be for childcare. But here's the thing, experts estimate that $10 billion is enough to cover just about 1 month of relief to stabilize the childcare sector as a whole. Minority Leader Schumer is the Senate's top Democrat, and he's been vocal in calling for his colleagues to work on relief that truly meets the needs of our communities, such as those in New York. The challenge before us, I think, is getting things through and making sure that childcare still remains a top priority for legislators, especially as they're negotiating what these funding amounts can look like. Members of Congress see a COVID relief package as a way for the country to survive for the next 4 months. And if it's only $10 billion for childcare, well, that's only enough to cover one of those 4 months leading into 2021. The political reality is that we're faced with a divided Congress who, in theory, want to see this COVID relief package move through. However, folks are still far apart on what priorities should be included and at what funding levels. And there are still sticking points that remain, like funding to state and localities, liability protections for businesses, stimulus checks for individuals, among others. I shared early in our program at the top of the start that childcare is recognized as an area of critical need, and that's why it's been included in the most recent legislative proposals and frameworks over the last few weeks, and even in an actual bill that passed in the House back in October. And this is where we saw that members of Congress acknowledged and could recognize that $57 billion for childcare is possible. This need for childcare has been a part of negotiations in the amount of $10 billion. It's a drastic change. And we know, again, that $10 billion is nowhere near enough of what it'll take to keep the childcare sector up and running to endure the uncertainties of both COVID and the economic impact that the pandemic brought about with it.
So, Christy, Senator Schumer is the minority leader in the Senate, and he's a key player in the relief negotiations. We heard from Joanne. And New York's other senator, Senator Gillibrand, has been a champion for childcare. She co-sponsored the Childcare is Essential Act. She's appeared with state leaders to call on Washington to provide more support for childcare. What can providers and parents do to help demonstrate to them that we need $57 billion in relief, not $10 billion, to save childcare in New York?
Well, Senator Schumer, as Joanne said, is an ally. They're both allies. When you speak to Senator Schumer or his staff, they'll tell you that he knows all about childcare because he has a grandchild who's a preschooler. Senator Schumer spends a lot of time with his family. He's very proud of his family. He's very involved. He's engaged with his grandson. I think folks on this call, this meeting, can reach out to Senator Schumer, whether you're from New York or whether you're from another state. Reach out to him as a grandparent. He's got a lot of pressure on him, as Joanne said, to fund many different needs, while Senate Republicans are saying they don't want to go above this $900 billion ceiling. So there are a lot of competing needs. Often it's the personal connection that really helps carry an issue over the finish line, and that can convince him that $10 billion is simply not enough right now for the childcare community. I think one thing that any parent, any grandparent in this meeting can do is reach out to him, engage him as a grandparent. His grandson, I suspect, attends preschool in Brooklyn, New York. There are 9,000 child care providers in New York City alone, 18,000 across the state, and think how many more across the country. So if we all reach out to Senator Schumer as a grandparent and said, okay, imagine that all of these families are your family. Extend your family. This is what he'll need to do. He'll need a personal connection to increase the amount above the current $10 billion. I think the message to both of our senators, Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand, is you've got to finish the job. It's not enough to say you're supportive. We understand there are a lot of pressures on you right now, but take this over the finish line. raise the amount, and get the job done. This is, it's not a theoretical argument anymore. Families and childcare providers are struggling, need your support, and need more than a month's worth of support at a time.
Thank you, Christine. Gladys, let's talk about the action that is shaping up around the state, New York State. Challenge elected officials to step up for the providers and parents. The New York City Council is holding virtual public hearing on the childcare crisis. There was one last week and another coming up on Wednesday. What's the message that providers and parents are sharing, council member and others around the state, and how can providers and family who are watching now get involved?
Okay, I could tell you one thing. We sure could use that $100 billion now. What's happening in the public hearings is they're hearing us. They're hearing our stories. There's nothing like providers speaking for themselves. There's nothing like parents speaking for themselves. It comes out so much better when the people that are going through it are heard by the people that can make the changes, whether it be local, state, and federal levels. So what I would suggest is we are going where no providers have gone before. We are advocating for ourselves. That is our power. Parents, your power is to speak up and what you need. Learning what we need to ask for. Again, at local, state, and federal levels. Making friends, political friends. We are going to public hearings, doing our testimonies. We're meeting with government agencies like Schumer's office. Yes, I met with Schumer's office. Meeting with our local mandating agencies, local, learning who is our political allies, who are child care champions, and converting those who are not. Supporting all groups that are doing the same, power to numbers. We're all doing the same thing. We hang out together. We're doing a lobby day. I love lobby days because this is one of the areas that will make the difference in what needs to change and what we need with people that can do it. Families, providers, and advocates in one voice. There's no stronger power than when the people speak their truths and are doing something about it. Federal mandatory funding is recommendations, collaboration between school systems and childcare stakeholders. That's what we need. Power to the people. Thank you.
So all three of you talked about the value of having provider input. Christy, I want to ask you, what's your vision for having providers as part of the decision-making process into the disbursement of any federal relief that comes? And then Gladys, I want you to talk to us about what your providers would share with decision makers about how to get the money out the door better in the next round. Christy?
Well, providers know what works. They know, the rubber meets the road in childcare programs, right? It's not, it's not on paper. It's not in talk on the airwaves. Providers can tell you what will work and what is not going to work before the policies get rolled out. At the state level, we have asked the state's Office of Children and Family Services to vet programs, vet initiatives, relief initiatives with a stakeholder committee before they roll these programs out. We saw a number of instances this year where the state rolled programs out to support providers, and many providers were saying, oh my gosh, we wish they had consulted with us first. So our vision, the vision of my organization, and I know that my colleague Gladys Jones, and I know that Rebecca shares this, and the others from New York State, our vision is let's listen to providers, hear their suggestions, and put that in front of policymakers before they make avoidable mistakes. That way, we can save everybody a lot of time and aggravation rolling out programs after they've been vetted by a stakeholder group from childcare, instead of rolling out programs and then having to backpedal and change requirements and change guidance so that they actually work. My organization, All Our Kin, works with family child care providers in Connecticut and in New York City. We listen to providers and put a set of recommendations in front of New York State and in front of Connecticut. I'll say that we did not have as much success with our programs being adopted in New York State, but we've had tremendous success with Connecticut taking many of our recommendations to heart. And we are continuing with providers in New York City and in the state. We're continuing to press for stakeholder involvement. We have a very strong coalition, a rural, urban, suburban coalition of providers through the Empire State Child Care Campaign. And when it matters, we are all, we speak in one voice, and we certainly speak in one voice with the state of New York. So we're continuing to press in all of our communications with New York's Child Care Agency, New York State's Child Care Agency. We're continuing to press for clear, thorough consultation with child care providers before rolling out plans to spend the next chunk of federal money.
So Gladys, what would your members share about how this money should get out the door to serve them in this crisis?
Right now, we need to sustain ourselves. We need to be around for when the world comes back. We need money now. I could see us using that 100 billion to sustain ourselves. If we are not well, our families are not well, and we're not good, we can't take care of anyone. So I would say, first of all, we have to educate ourselves and knowing what to ask for. Be everywhere, anywhere, they're going to listen to us, and we have to speak for ourselves. So our providers are learning about the CDBG, all the initials you can think of, and we're learning who's our friends and who are not our friends. And we're also learning that we are worthy. We are worthy to get whatever it is out there along with the families of the nation. That is what I would say to you, that our providers are learning to learn what are they worth. Thank you.
So thank you, Gladys. To the viewers of New York, make sure you join us on February 2nd, 9 and 16 and beyond to urge our legislators that we need $100 billion for our families and childcare to survive. So I want to thank Gladys, Joanne, Christy, Liddy, and Nina for joining us today and for all the hard work you guys do daily. Very much appreciated. And now I will pass it on to our co-hosts, Wensley and Britannia.
Thank you, Rebecca and Nina, and thank you to my fellow New York organizers that are doing such important work to protect and expand childcare access in my city and in my state. Really, really, especially appreciate you for all the awesome work that you're doing, because I know that I will surely benefit from it, and so will my family. We know that New York is the third largest state after California and Texas. So I think some of the ways that we can set trends, set precedents, and build an equitable system that works for the population here in the state is going to be, it's going to set a model for what can happen in other places. So make sure that you get connected to the Empire State Campaign for Childcare statewide. Make sure that you get connected to ECE on the Move. They are awesome. They are amazing. And we want to make sure that we're supporting them in their awesome work. here in New York. So now we're going to open up for some more audience questions and comments. And so right now, I want you to think about this last 2.5 hours that you've been with us. You have heard about the federal cry, the need, the vision for a universal equitable system. You have heard about some of the incredible organizing that is happening in places like California, in New Mexico, in Minnesota, in Michigan, in New York. You have heard some powerful stories, right, that speak truth to childcare, that speak truth to power, that really sort of highlight the need and the crisis, but also the power and the vision and the hope and the dreams of these powerful women that are doing this work. And now we want to hear from you. We really do want to hear from you. So we encourage you to, in the comment, if you're joining us now and there's a question or piece you missed and you're like, tell me a little bit more about that. Or there's a thing that you heard that you are not sure about, but you want us to dig in deeper. This is your time to make sure that you chime in and give us your questions and your comments. So go for it. And again, remember to say where you're in from and tuning in from, so that there's a way for us to connect you to some of the local organizers in your area. So there's a question from our very own Michelle. What can people outside New York do to uplift childcare? That's exactly what we've been talking about, all day, all night for the last 2.5 hours. I would say that that's why it's important, right, that we take on these local and state fights, and that these local and state fights are connected to a federal vision and a federal demand and a federal actions that we can take together to push for our vision. I love this conversation about New York and how folks were talking about, how do we move our senators? How do we move Gillibrand and Schumer? Schumer is like an obvious target, right? He's the minority leader currently of the Senate. He has power in the Democratic caucus. He has power in terms of being able to negotiate Democratic priorities at the national level. And we want to make sure that folks in New York are raising your voices and that you are calling him out, because he is accountable to those of us that live in the state. But he's also accountable to everyone else in the country, because he is, like I said, setting the direction and priority for a lot of the Democratic Senate. And so we want to make sure that he's hearing from all of us. We want to make sure that your members of Congress hear from you. The ones that are with us already, we want them to know that we're watching them, that we have their back, and that the fight is happening in DC and in the streets. We want to make sure that we're leveraging the relationships that we have with them, right, to put pressure on Schumer and others so that they can deliver on the priorities for childcare. And we want to make sure that those that are not with us know that we know they're not with us, and that we apply the kind of pressure from the outside, from the grassroots, is going to get them to feel shame for not being with us, right? To feel shame for not fighting for our families, for standing in the way of childcare and a universal system that's equitable for all families. So make sure that you reach out to your members of Congress, and also don't be shy with Senator Schumer. Go ahead and reach out to him. Let him know what's at stake, and that he needs to be accountable to all folks across the country. That's the price for leadership, right? Can we get some more comments and questions and stories from folks that might be tuning in with us now? I'm going to give a little bit of time for folks to put your questions and your comments in the chat box. Yeah, that's right. the wisdom of Michelle coming through again, making sure that we're not just doing this on our own, right? Because we're part of a larger movement that's trying to really raise voices and get the vote, get the uplift the voices of all of us, of childcare providers, of parents, of all families, and then it's really critically important that we're also inviting other people to take action with us, to be part of the fight with us, to tell their stories. We want to make sure that all families, that all folks that are directly impacted get to be part of this fight in some way. I love these comments coming in. We demand that we'll be heard, to speak up and speak out for your future, that we need this investment now. That's right. The question from Vicky, how do we move forward getting in a seat on the Senate while working for funding? So there's a lot at stake, I think, right now. I think folks know that there's a live, our elections are not over at the federal level. There's a live fight happening there's a live election that is happening in Georgia, 2 elections actually happening in Georgia for both of their Senate seats to have a runoff January 5th. So we know that there's a lot at stake. We know that our brothers and sisters in Georgia, many of whom have also been organizing for childcare at the state, local, and federal level, are busy. They're trying to. There's a fight for generational fight that they're in right now to make sure that we get champions in Congress as part of those 2 Senate seats that are going to fight for childcare and are going to fight for our families. So it's really important. Make sure that you're paying attention. Make sure that if there's any call from our friends in Georgia to help and support that fight to get out the vote of childcare voters, that you're standing by and supporting the work that is happening there. Getting some awesome comments from the chat. Andrea says, I like the fact that we're connecting statewide with other childcare early educators. We are all in this together. That's right. We're all in this fight together. That's part of why having these moments, conversations like today, is so critical. And Rita Anias, welcome back. How are you feeling? We've heard so much from so many folks over the last 2.5 hours. We're almost coming to the end of our time together. How are you feeling? What are you ready for? I want to hear all about it.
Absolutely. I am feeling so empowered. The stories that we've heard today are exactly what we need to tell Congress. We need substantial funding to the childcare sector that is going to make a difference in our communities, and we need it now. So just like you guys have been saying, I want to amplify your voices as we go into this next childcare movement piece. And there's no better way to do it than engaging you guys right now. So if you guys have not already done that call to Congress, well, you guys get it done, because childcare cannot wait. I wanted to make sure that we make time to take care of ourselves throughout this pandemic too. As a childcare provider, I've been focused on this segment right here, because without everything coming together with Congress, them coming together for childcare, we will not have the substantial funding that we need to stabilize childcare. Your story deserves to be heard, and your essential labor deserves to be seen. For all my fellow childcare providers out there, I feel you, I see you, I hear you, and your work is so important. To the parents who support us, thank you. To the childcare supporters who are in your communities advocating for this, we need you, and thank you so much.
Yeah. So we're gonna give time for a couple more comments from the chat, and then we're gonna start to wrap up. Give you all an early evening so you can go back to your families. You want to read this one?
Awesome. Yeah. It says from Giovanna Anderson, she says, make sure you are telling your truth to all of your representatives. Our stories are just as important as our vote. We have the voice and we deserve to be heard right now. Exactly what we've been saying on this call. And I'm so glad to provide you guys with this opportunity to make real change. Oh, yes. Thanks, Michelle. Self care is my thing, and we all need to take care of ourselves throughout this pandemic. But how Congress can take care of us, that is with the child care stimulus relief package. So make sure you take care of yourself and call Congress for child care.
That's right. Let's make sure that we're continuing to advocate for childcare to be a priority. Let's not let this important work be invisibilized any longer. Call your members of Congress and demand they fully fund childcare. Demand the first down payment of $100 billion. And let's demand that they invest in an ongoing infrastructure for childcare system, that they make the structural changes that are needed for our providers and our parents and the rest of our families across the country. Coming in from, I missed that one. There's a beautiful message I missed. You guys are awesome, and I've been fighting for my representatives and will continue to do so. Thanks for all you do, for the amazing support. Yeah, that's what it's about, right? Like, we got to be in solidarity, got to do this work together. You want to get this one?
Yeah. So just like Lorana was saying, we need our seat at the table, and Congress, that's the way to talk to them. We need to tell our stories and make sure that we have everybody represented: our parents, providers, childcare supporters, community leaders. They all need to have an investment in this childcare system. She also said Congress needs to monitor the city sectors of representatives to make sure that we are all a priority. And I can't agree with you more.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Michelle, yes, that phone to action is so easy. I called over a couple of days ago and I demanded that childcare get the attention that it needs throughout this pandemic. And so when I did it, I felt so empowered. And I actually led other local childcare providers in my community to do the same. I walked them through it and we took action, telling our childcare truth and making sure our voices are heard so that we don't get left out of these negotiations about what is going to happen to the childcare sector. And you guys can do it too. Like, in the time that we've had to take these questions, you guys can pick up the phone, call Congress for childcare, and demand that they pass a childcare stimulus relief package so that your community can be better supported, with their parents having access to the childcare subsidies, to providers having access to quality funding, also to make sure we get that funding so that we can purchase the supplies that will keep our operations safe. I can show up with receipts every single day to Congress telling them that $40 a month that my local subsidy program gave me in hazard pay, that only pays for like a week of of PPE supplies with masks, gloves, sanitation, like all those kind of things. It starts adding up. And regardless of what I can put into my business, I need help because this is ridiculous. Nobody saw this pandemic coming, and we're asking Congress to see us now.
Yeah. Why don't we actually play the phone to action guide one more time?
Absolutely, yes.
Go to bit.ly/childcarevoices. On the left is a description of our campaign. On the right, you input your personal information. This connects you with the correct representatives. Make sure you put the phone number of the phone you will be using and be sure to turn off any silencers or blockers that will prevent the call from going through. When you're ready, click the big red button. Next, read the script and get your one line of why childcare is important to you. Then, click the next big red button. Our tool will now call you. Don't hang up. President-elect Biden might only have one rep, but you probably have 3. The system will have you call each, and it will auto-dial as soon as you are done with one. When you are finished, give yourself a pat on the back for speaking truth to power and share with your friends. We made that easy too.
Awesome.
Yes.
So,
as you saw, Yeah, as you saw, like it's so simple. Like even President-elect Joe Biden can do this, and I hope he does this. On behalf of all of our families and communities, Joe Biden and his administration need to take this seriously. We're going to ask you guys to call him out on social media. Call out your local representatives with the action that you have taken. Share this live stream to as many people as you can to get out the childcare message. We need funding now. Call your members of Congress for childcare. Raise your childcare voices in our chorus of childcare stories. Back to you, Wendeley.
Yeah. So we're going to start to wrap up a little early. First, I just want to thank all of our speakers. I want to thank the powerful women who are doing such kick-ass organizing in every corner of our country. I want to give a big shout out to the Childcare Changemakers movement, the vibrancy, the power, the childcare truth telling. I want to give a big shout out to all the local partner organizations that were part of today, those that were visibly in front of the camera and those that were not in front of the camera, because we have grassroots organizations in almost every state across the country that are doing important work around childcare and early learning. I want to make sure that we recognize, they know that we see you, we appreciate you. We know how important this work is, and thank you for doing all the work that you do on the ground that has allowed for this moment that we're in that is only full of opportunity and possibility at the national level for childcare. We want to make sure that you know there is a bold vision for childcare. What we're fighting for here is not scraps. What we're fighting for here is not the usual back to normal status quo. What we're fighting for here is something transformative. It's something that's going to have an immense impact in people's lives. It's something that is going to lift families out of poverty. It's something that's going to guarantee that childcare providers have adequate wages, that they have benefits, that they can also care for their families the way that they care for our babies. This is about making sure that women have the freedom to do the work that they love and also do the labor of love with their families. This is about women's empowerment. This is about women's freedom. This is about the entire family, because we know that when women thrive, entire families thrive. So make sure that you join our movement. Make sure that you connect to one of the local organizations in your location, that you connect to Changemakers on Facebook, that you get out the word, that you contact your members of Congress. Do not be shy. As Charlie said earlier, we cannot continue to ask for scraps. We have to demand the future that we need, the future that we deserve, because the future depends on all of us.
Yes, and though we've come to our time, the end of our time here tonight, I want to thank you all for keeping childcare a priority and being a childcare change maker in your local communities. One thing I want to leave you with is the famous quote by Dr. John Trainer, a family physician. He boldly declared that children are not a distraction from more important work. They are the most important work. And I live by that phrase every day. So let's start acting like it. I'm wishing you all health and wealth. I'm Brittanya Bays.
And I'm Wendeley Maste. Good night, everyone.
Good night.